Watch the replay. Watch it again. The ball leaves his foot, crosses the line, and the net explodes. 40,000 people scream at once. But here's what almost nobody catches. In that exact half second, before the referee even looks down, something inside that ball already knows the truth. It already decided if the goal counts. Not the linesman, not the crowd. The ball. This isn't science fiction. This is the actual ball you'll watch roll across the grass in 2026. It costs $170. It weighs less than a can of soda. And somewhere inside its 4 panels sits a sensor that can overrule the most powerful man on the pitch 500 times every single second. You've watched 1,000 goals in your life. You've never once thought about the ball itself. Why would you? It's just a ball. That's exactly what they want you to think. So here's the question nobody's asking. If the ball decides before the human does, who's really in charge out there? And why does almost nobody on Earth know the answer? Stick around. This one gets a lot stranger than you think. Hey, I'm Leo. Welcome to Footy Leo, where we dig into the stories hiding underneath the game you already love. And today, we're talking about the most overlooked object in the entire sport. Not a player, not a stadium, a ball. Let's go back, way back. The first footballs weren't built, they were grown. Literally pig bladders, inflated and tied off, kicked through English fields back in the 12th century. Lumpy, lopsided, they popped mid-game constantly. Nobody minded. Nobody knew any better yet. Then in 1855, a man named Charles Goodyear figured out how to vulcanize rubber into a sphere. Round, predictable, bouncy in a way nothing had ever been before. It changed the sport overnight. For the first time, players could actually trust the object they were kicking. Before that, you never knew which way the bladder would bounce. Now you did. But here's the detail almost nobody remembers. At the very first World Cup final in 1930, Argentina and Uruguay couldn't even agree on whose ball to use. So they compromised. First half, Argentina's ball. Second half, Uruguay's ball. Argentina led at halftime. Uruguay won the match. With their own ball. Sit with that for a second. The outcome of a World Cup final partly decided by which ball happened to be on the field. If that sounds insane to you, it should. And for almost a century now, one company has made sure that chaos never happens again. But the story of how they pulled that off doesn't start in a lab in Germany. It doesn't start in some glass office either.
It starts in a city you've probably never heard of, in a country that has never, not once, qualified for a World Cup. And somehow, that one city makes almost every ball you've ever kicked. The city is called Sialkot, northeastern Pakistan, and the story of how it became the soccer ball capital of the planet starts with something that has nothing to do with soccer at all. Back in the 18th century, the British Empire needed leather goods for its military, saddles mostly, and Sialkot's craftsmen were good at it. Generation after generation, they worked leather by hand, perfecting stitches most of us will never even notice on a finished product. Then, sometime in the 1880s, a British officer walked into a Sialkot leather shop holding a punctured football. He just wanted it patched. But the craftsman who took it didn't just fix the hole. He studied the stitching, took it apart in his head, and then he started making his own balls from scratch. That single decision, made by one man in one shop, turned into an entire industry. Today, 70% of every soccer ball on Earth comes from that same city. Not 70% of World Cup balls, 70% of all of them. The ones in your local park, the ones at your kids' practice, the ones in the Premier League warm-up before kickoff. 1,000 factories.
60,000 workers, roughly 40 million balls stitched, inflated, and shipped out of Sialkot every single year. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Pakistan is obsessed with cricket. Soccer barely registers nationally. The country has never once qualified for a World Cup. Not in 1970, not ever. But somewhere in Sialkot, right now, someone's hands are shaping the exact ball that will cross the goal line in the 2026 final. They'll never play in that match. They're building it anyway. Here's the paradox nobody talks about. In a world of robots, automation, and AI doing almost everything, the World Cup ball, the most advanced ball in the history of the sport, is still sewn together by hand. Each stitcher in Sialkot sits cross-legged on the floor with a kit of pre-cut panels, waxed nylon thread, and a curved needle. And then the work begins. One ball requires somewhere between 1,600 and over 2,000 individual stitches, depending on the design. Every single one has to match the tension of the one before it. One loose stitch creates a microscopic deformation. At 80 miles an hour, that turns a clean strike into a shot that curves in a way nobody intended. A skilled stitcher takes 3 to 5 hours to finish one ball.
The best ones in Sialkot have spent decades on this. Their fingers develop calluses in the exact same spots. Their muscle memory gets so precise, some of them can stitch in total darkness. For 30 years, manufacturers have tried replacing them with machines. None of them worked. The reason is almost poetic. The ball has to be sewn inside out, then physically turned right side out in one violent 90-second move. Push, pull, fold. The material creaks under the strain. If even one stitch is weak, the whole thing tears apart. Right there. No second chance. No robot has the flexibility or the touch to do that part. So the most technologically advanced object in soccer still needs a human hand to be born at all. Every camera angle, every replay, every slow motion shot of that ball curling into the top corner, it all traces back to someone sitting on a floor in Sialkot, feeling for a stitch that's just slightly too loose. But Sialkot's hands only build half the story, because before the World Cup ball ever leaves the factory, it gets one more secret built into it, one that has nothing to do with leather or thread. The 2026 ball is called the Trianda. And unlike anything before it, it's made from just 4 panels, thermally bonded together with heat and pressure, fused at a molecular level. No seams, no weak points where water gets in. The 2022 ball had 20 panels. The 2014 ball had 6. 4 is the lowest number in World Cup history. Fewer panels means fewer edges catching air, which means straighter flight, which means goalkeepers finally get a ball that behaves the way they expect it to. Now here's the part that sounds like science fiction. One of those 4 panels hides a chip. A sensor firing 500 times every single second, recording the ball's exact position, its speed, its spin, its trajectory through the air. You can't feel it, you can't see it. Pick up a Trianda and it feels like any other ball on Earth. But the second it touches the pitch, it starts transmitting. 12 cameras track every player on the field. That chip tracks the ball. When a striker receives a pass and the flag goes up for offside, here's what actually happens in under 1 second. An AI cross-references the exact frame the ball left the passer's foot against the receiver's body position. It draws the offside line. It measures the gap down to the centimeter. The ball isn't just being played anymore, it's a witness.
And it never blinks, never gets a bad angle, never argues with the coach on the sideline. Every controversial offside call you've ever screamed about on your couch, this is the system built to make sure it never happens again. Before any of that chip data means anything, the ball has to survive something brutal. Every single World Cup ball gets measured at 16 different points around its circumference. The allowed variation between the largest point and the smallest is barely over half an inch. Miss that window and it's rejected, no exceptions. Then comes the drop test. From 2 meters onto solid concrete, over and over, sometimes more than 200 times in a row. It has to bounce back into the exact same range every single time. Then it gets submerged in water for hours and weighed again, because a ball that soaks up water gets heavier, slower, and frankly dangerous to head. Then it's inflated to double the legal pressure and left like that for 3 full days straight, just to see if the seams hold or the shape collapses. Around 8% of every batch fails. Those balls get destroyed. They never make it to a single shelf, let alone a single pitch. And here's the strange part of all of this. Every World Cup ball in modern history has been hated before the tournament even started.
The 2010 ball got called a beach ball by a Spanish goalkeeper. An English keeper called it terrible. One designer said whoever made it should be fired into space. Then the tournament begins. Goals start going in, and by the final, nobody's talking about the ball anymore. 4 years later, that same hated ball is selling as a collector's item for double what it cost the first time around. That pattern isn't an accident, by the way. Every generation gets rounder, smoother, faster. Fewer panels means fewer seams, and fewer seams means less air resistance. The ball leaves the boot quicker than it used to. Good news for strikers, bad news for goalkeepers, and exactly what the people running this sport actually want. If you've made it this far with me, that tells me something. You're the kind of person who actually wants to know how things work, not just watch them happen. That's exactly who this channel is for. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe and stick around, because we put out a story like this almost every single day. Quick question for you while we're here. Did you know any of this before today, or is your mind already changing how you watch the next goal you see?
Drop your answer in the comments. I actually read those. All right, back to it. Because there's one more layer to this, and it's the one nobody mentions. Adidas doesn't just make this ball. They've paid FIFA for the exclusive right to manufacture every single World Cup ball in a deal that stretches across more than 50 years. And that $170 match ball you'll see at kickoff, that's not where the real money lives. The replicas are. Millions of them at Esley price points, sold in nearly every country on Earth before a single whistle has even blown on the tournament itself. The 2026 broadcast rights alone are worth almost $4 billion. The ball isn't just equipment anymore. It's a product, a business. And every controversy, every goalkeeper complaint, every headline calling it terrible, that's not bad press. That's free marketing. By the time the final whistle blows on this tournament, the Triota will have made more money sitting on a store shelf than it will ever make rolling across a pitch. And somewhere in all of that, the ball you'll watch decide a World Cup is still, at its core, the same idea a craftsman had in a leather shop in 1880. Someone just added a chip to it.
So let's go back to where we started. That half second after the shot, before the referee even looks down, when something already knows if the goal counts. We called that strange at the start of this video. It isn't strange anymore. Now you know exactly what's happening inside it. A chip firing 500 times a second, deciding outcomes faster than any human eye can move. And underneath that chip, layers of polyurethane, stitched by hand, in a city that has never once stood on a World Cup pitch. 60,000 workers in a country obsessed with a completely different sport, building the single object that the entire planet will obsess over for 39 days straight. The ball will get hated in the opening week. Someone will call it unpredictable. A goalkeeper will blame it after a loss.
And by the final, nobody will remember saying that. They'll just remember the goal. Here's what stays with me. Every World Cup final ever played came down to an object that someone, somewhere, built with their own two hands, knowing they'd never get to play with it themselves. They'll never hear the crowd. They'll never see the trophy lifted. But every cheer in every stadium this summer runs straight back through their fingertips first. Maybe that's the most honest thing about this entire sport. The biggest moments always get built by hands that never get to stand inside them. If this one got you thinking, do me a favor. Follow the channel and send this to 5 people who watch the World Cup and have never once thought about the ball. Leave a real comment, not just a reaction, an actual thought, and tell me what you want us to dig into next.